This is a show about facing fear, unlocking courage, and taking action.
Courage isn't necessarily a daunting thing.
It's going to give you more purpose. It's going to give you more drive.
It feels like making a courageous decision is going to get you closer to who you aspire to be.
It's knowledge plus faith plus action equals courage.
We had a culture where people could express their opinions. We were highly communicative about where the company was really at with all employees. We would share financials regularly with all employees. We basically treated every employee like an investor, like a board director, more or less.
What's up, courageous fam? Before we dive deep with my badass guest, and he's a badass. It's been really cool actually to kind of have a front row seat. Maybe I had a third row seat to watch my guest do what he does. But before we jump in, tick, 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 the clock is ticking. We've got 50 days left of summer, folks. I've never been one for the term of work-life balance. I'm more of a I'm air quoting here, your life's work and integrate it all together. But if you're feeling a little burned out, if you're of the mindset of PTO or TKO, you got 50 days to get a weekend getaway, get the bucket full before you take a run at the fall. Which might actually be a better segue into this lead, because my guest, it sure seems like you're a master juggler, and there's an intentionality, I'm sure, to how you do what you do. But I've always gained a lot of energy from you, and I'd say the best way that I could think of introducing our guest today, and I don't use this word lightly, but I'd put you in the pioneer arena. Sitting at the intersection of social impact and technology, or maybe social impact and scaling startups. And if you're going to go three-legged stool, I think you have to add leadership into the fold. It's been really cool to watch. Scot Chisholm was co-founder of Classy.org. He really revolutionized the way nonprofits fundraised, sold that company off. We can talk about that. I'm sure you're kind of done talking about that. You now live in Montana full time. How's that going?
It's going great. Yeah, we moved in 2020, and like many people, we were looking to shake things up around that time, and we ended up getting trapped here because of COVID, and then we fell in love. So it was kind of a accidental thing, but our kids were young enough where we said, if we're going to do this, we should do it now. Before they, were really embedded in the school system and whatnot. And so that's what we did. And it's been awesome. Love San Diego. That's why I still have Anchorman on I guess it's my left shoulder. Love San Diego. We love visiting. It's been actually cool to visit San Diego as someone that doesn't live there now. I end up going to places that I didn't go before, which was kind of neat. But no, I see that as sort of our second home still.
East Coast guy turned West Coast guy. Do you still consider yourself on the West Coast in Montana?
I would say so, yeah. It's kind of like Pacific Northwest vibes.
Yeah.
It's definitely mountainous, but there's a good part of the year that is kind of wet and obviously cold. So I like seasons though, and it's a ski town. So my kids are now growing up skiing, which is really cool, and it was important to us.
All right, so you're juggling away still. Some people would probably just ride off into the sunset. And I don't think that's really your style, obviously. And also what you built at Classy it had serious impact. I think there was a ton of joy. Would you agree you had joy building the company?
Oh yeah. I mean, ups and downs and all arounds, there were moments of utter despair, and there were moments of just gratitude, joy, all of the above. And I think that's kind of part of any startup journey, but ours was long, it was a slog. It wasn't like we just had breakout success. We weren't Slack or something. We came into a very old industry, and we stuck to our guns. Honestly, we were, I think what ultimately led to the success of that company was our focus. And it's funny that you call me a juggler, because I don't disagree, but there was a period of time when we were starting Classy for almost a decade where I did nothing but obsess over the company. And it was really a bunch of incremental, small wins that added up to later it looking kind of like explosive growth. But really, it was like a 10-year plus journey to get there. Now I'm fortunate to be in a position where I can juggle a few projects. I can kind of go after some passions outside of the nonprofit tech space, but I actually am still involved. I advise the CEO of GoFundMe and the executive team, and that's been awesome. I'm not an operator, I'm not in the company per se, but it's been really cool to see how GoFundMe has integrated Classy and how basically to see the thesis of the acquisition start to come to fruition, which is really kind of cool. Being a semi outsider, semi insider, not having to do the day to day, the 9 to 5, but still being plugged in enough to see the whole thing happen.
When you get the call now, I mean, I'm assuming are you on a ritualized, hey, once a month, once a quarter, or is it more, you know what, let's bring Scott in to talk about this? Which one is it?
It's the latter. So it's ad hoc. I actually opted to not join the board as part of the deal. I just needed a break. And I was going through some health stuff, and I had just transitioned as CEO, mainly just because it was just, a decade plus of grind kind of adding up. And so now I try to add a little bit. I don't love the word work-life balance either, but I am trying to add a little bit more balance, even with multiple projects, because I was kind of like almost TKO'd. I had to bring someone else in, but that led in quick succession to the acquisition. So it's very ad hoc. It's when they need me. It's usually on strategy and market stuff and product stuff and vision, which is awesome. It's a truly fun to work on that type of stuff. And so yeah, that's kind of my involvement now.
We had Eric Ryan on here a couple weeks ago. Eric, if you don't know Eric, I need to connect you to Eric. You might have met him through Summit, because I think that's where we jammed way back
Yeah.
when. Did you ever hang out with him?
I don't know if I hung out, but I definitely know the name and know of him for sure.
I mean, you guys would it would be a good dinner to set up at some point, because you guys,
I'm in.
you're not like, you both are who you are. You're not trying to be anybody you're not. But he had, this is not a new idea, but he talks about the artist operator model for him. And
Mhm.
he's like, I feel like he's more on the artist side. Where do you see yourself? Do you see yourself as more on the artist side or the operator side?
Well, it's funny. I grew up as an artist actually and went to engineering school, not by design, but because my dad suggested that it was a good idea for career reasons. And he convinced me that I could be artistic within the engineering field. And I actually started in comp sci, but I quickly bailed out of that. I was like, this is definitely not for me. Then I went to a mechanical and industrial engineering, but it starts off with like hardcore calculus, hardcore everything. And I mean, I was barely surviving in that major. When it switched over to industrial, which is basically like operations management and ops, and the underlying foundation is in probability and statistics, not calculus. For some reason, I started getting A pluses. It's literally just a way of thinking. Like my brain just went tweak, and all of a sudden, I just got it. It was so bizarre because I never thought I would really be good at engineering, and I was really good at process and probability and statistics, and there was more creativity I found in that realm. So I ended up with an industrial engineering degree, and really, I would say, coming back to your question, I'd say probably operator, but I like to create some sort of structure within my companies for people, so people understand and have have a framework to follow. But there's enough individual autonomy, not only for myself but everyone, where they can be creative, they can express themselves, and they can add their own unique, individualism and innovation into the company itself. If it's too rigid, things break down. If there's not enough structure, things break down. There is a sweet spot there. So I'd say like 2 parts ops, 1 part artist at this point.
That sounds like a math equation to me, if you ask me. It sounds very engineering, if you ask me.
Yeah. Actually, yesterday, I used the word delta, and they're like, were you an engineer? I'm like, oh God. Yeah, I
Oh
guess.
boy. Well, it's funny. I obviously you want to be thoughtful with our time and our conversation, and this is the Courageous Podcast, and you'd expect us to talk about fear and courage. But I found myself, the more I tried to study your trajectory to here, curious about drive, intentionality, curiosity, rhythm, fun, and yeah, courage. Yeah, absolutely. And permission granted to pluck any word of those that pops for you and take it and run with it.
Yeah, I mean, drive. Everyone has kind of their own levels of drive, and they have sort of different reasons for the drive. Mine has always been, now that you asked the question, just I spontaneously think meaning. And that can take a lot of different forms, I think. It's not necessarily like legacy building meaning. It's more just intentionality with what I'm spending my time on in my short time on Earth. Now with a family, I think it has to come into another focus, to have some balance there and to also be a good dad and to hopefully teach my kids good values. A lot of the values I learned was actually from working with people, from building teams. And I think I was able to hopefully become a better human simply because of the journey that I went on with Classy, the ups and downs and all arounds, as I say, like it's not all positive. And you learn to deal with you learn to deal with adversity. You learn to become resilient. And those are some of the traits and values that I'm trying to pass on to my sons. Our actual last name, the Scottish motto, is this phrase "Feros Ferio," and I have it tattooed on my arms. We have it on the wall in our house too, and it means "Be fierce with the fierce." Basically, never give up, more or less. And that's kind of, I mean, my newsletter is named "Never Say Die" for that exact reason. To
Which
me,
is
it
so
really is
good,
about,
by the way. It is.
yeah, it's good. It's a Goonies reference, but it's
It's of
also
course.
it's just it's about resilience. And honestly, I've now invested in dozens of other startups, and the ones you think are going to succeed, they're backed by Google, they're backed by whoever, Sequoia or something like that. It doesn't end up working out. The ones that are kind of like almost no name, but they just will not call it, and they're relentless about their learning, and then they end up with something totally different. Chris Carver from San Diego is one of them, actually. I mean, he's had like 3 iterations of that company, spawned one acquisition to Classy, actually, and 2 other companies. Pretty amazing. Like, I mean, he just keeps going, and he's relentless. And it's those types of people, and I would put the Classy founders in that bucket, where we didn't have advanced degrees, we weren't PhDs, we weren't like overly smart. We didn't use fancy words. We were like more street smart and more resilient than anything else. And that truly was the difference. When everyone else was like, "This is really hard, I'm going to quit now," we were like, "Fuck it. We're leaning into this." Like we literally would say, "We will be the last one standing. We don't care if we're the smartest, the best product, the best market. We will literally be the last one standing." And so that type of mentality, I think, was just ingrained in me growing up through Classy and now later in life. And that's what drives me. I think it's doing something hard. It's getting through those hard moments, but it's also the meaning of it all, like the values and the journey and all the learnings you're getting from there. Just, I think it evolves you into a better person, personally.
So much in there. Like let me try to give you some love on a few things. I love the newsletter name and the reference to the Goonies, but even more, I love the newsletter. I just think it's really good. And every once in a while, someone will, I have my weekly dose of courage, and someone will very sweetly respond, like, "I don't read anybody's newsletter. I read your newsletter. Thank you." I can't imagine you're not getting that. I think I sent you something like that too, and
You did. You
right.
did.
I'm super skeptical of these things, and I'm like, you're always like very thoughtful on making sure there's utility and value that you're giving, or if it's a waste, it's not in there. So
Mhm.
thank you for having that level of thoughtfulness, which kind of leads to my next thought/question. Um, when you look at yourself, whether you want to look at yourself as just Scott or a brand, because you're both, do you have, like, I can rattle off my own personal core values. Have you
Mhm.
gone to that length for yourself? And I mean, we've heard a couple themes already here, but do you know them? And you're like, "Oh, for a fact, I'm X, Y, or Z."
Yes, I think I do, and some of them were born out of Classy, like I was saying. I would say it's absolutely resilience and not giving up. It's absolutely a learning or beginner's mindset in everything that I do. So just because I've had some quote unquote success through Classy, I don't even really think about that. Like, it doesn't even register in my brain. It's more on to the next thing, in a way, like, what can I take from this and learn climb the next mountain. There's so much in this life that I haven't even touched that other people are phenomenal at. So just because, I went through some journey and it turned out decently well, It doesn't mean squat. It puts us in a good position, but you got to be a lifelong learner. So I think that's huge. And the third's probably to give a shit or stand for something or give a damn like about something, right? Like I actually like opinionated people. I don't like, folks that are going to jam it down your throat, but I do really appreciate hearing people's perspectives. That's why I like interviewing people myself as well. And I'm just super curious about
Yeah.
what made up Ryan. Like what's
How did this
the,
happen?
yeah, how did it happen and why did you form your worldviews and how can we, even if mine are different, I actually love spying with someone on that stuff. Not like a heated debate over Thanksgiving dinner with like your, drunk uncle or something, but like with a friend or someone that's friendly that you respect. Like there's a lot of people I respect. You mentioned Summit Series earlier. There's a whole range of diverse folks part of Summit Series. I didn't agree with every one of them, but having a really intellectual conversation and not getting super fired up is actually really awesome. And we had a value in Classy called Stand for Something. And that was actually, we created that value because we had two Republicans and two Democrats as founders, and we didn't agree on a whole lot, but we were able to have those conversations and hash it out, and a lot of good came from that. Like the sum of those conversations was net positive. It was like a 1 + 1 = 3, and so we said, we really believe in this idea that you rather than just being complacent, rather than not having opinions and talking them through is a great thing. And that's where we came up with Stand for Something. So I really believe in probably those three, and I've extended them into my personal life and quote unquote brand.
You brought up one that I left off the table, and the multiplier, I think, is when you can find partners on the journey there's alignment on belief systems, but strengths. Like, hey, thank God I've got this person. They're so good at things that I'm not good at.
Mm-hmm.
And anytime I met with you, I felt like we met every time the cicadas came out, which isn't that much, obviously, but like it wasn't 17 years. Like every 4 or 5 years, we'd go get a beer, and I was always impressed by how little daylight there was between you and a co-founder. Even if you guys came at it from different ways, you guys were aligned, and it's a very lonely journey for a lot of leaders, which I think we're going to get to your leadership program. And just being an ally or having someone to hold hands with to spar on things. One of my favorite words I think is least utilized in business is collisions. And it's like collisions is looked at as like a negative thing. It's like, no, we actually do want more collisions. You can come at it, be thoughtful about how you come at it, but usually what comes out of that is the 1 + 1 = 3 moment. So,
that's cool. I like that word.
Bravo to you on, by the way, how did you guys all meet? I remember there being like, was it dodgeball or there was like, am I
There
getting
was
that
a
wrong?
dodgeball league in the middle of that. That's actually how I met my wife.
Okay.
My wife is also the smallest shareholder of Classy. She invested like $7,500. I convinced her to invest after a date, which, I was, I guess, a little bit of a scumbag, but it worked out. So it's fine. My co-founders, my main co-founder, Pat, we met in engineering school, actually.
Okay.
And we both came out to San Diego pretty much like right after we graduated. And the other two we met, or I met at Booz Allen Hamilton, which was my first job, which is a management consultancy. And they just happened to be, have offices in the same area of the building. And one of them was actually my office mate. And he moved up to Montana too. But it was kind of random. And if you remember Classy's story, it started with a pub crawl to raise money for cancer research. It did not start as a tech company. Right. So it started with a bunch of friends hanging out, having a good time, recruiting other people to have a good time and also raise money. So, I mean, that's we just started from the most ridiculous, humble beginnings. And the name Classy came from the movie Anchorman with Will Ferrell when he says that catchphrase, "You stay classy, San Diego." And my buddy Pete, who was living with me at the time, was like, "Why do we name the pub crawl the Stay Classy Pub Crawl?" Never thinking that it would go anywhere, beyond that. And that one event turned into dozens of events for different charitable causes. And it really became almost like a movement of young people across San Diego to attend these events. And we raised money for all different types of stuff. And eventually, when we got to understand the nonprofits that we were working with and the technology they were using, we were like, wow, this is dog shit. I can't believe that this really sophisticated, otherwise sophisticated organization is using this software to try to raise money, to try to talk and communicate to young people. Like they're so far off. And so because of that, the experience running the events and actually like kind of being in the trenches with nonprofits and then seeing what they were using, it just gave us the confidence to say, we can do this better, much better. So we went through the Connect Springboard program, which is one of the earliest accelerators. I think Qualcomm went through that. And we pivoted. I like to say it's the biggest pivot of in software history, from a pub crawl to a SaaS company. And we relaunched in January 2011, really as a tech company. But the co-founders were there from the beginning. Like they were doing the events, they were carrying the tents, they were doing, like, we were all. So I think through that and the fact that I knew Pat before, there was this embedded trust before we ever even hit go as a tech company. And a lot of founders don't have that. And it's why Combinator screens for co-founder relationships when they're looking at accepting people. If you're a lone wolf, I think you actually might have to have a co-founder in Y Combinator. And it's for those reasons that you just said. It's like when one co-founder wants to quit, the other one convinces them not to. When the other one wants to quit, the other one convinces them not to. And that's that resilient piece. We're not bulletproof, right? We have these moments of vulnerability, moments of wanting to give up. Sometimes you can get through that yourself, but a lot of times you're like on the edge, and your co-founder is essential in helping you make the right choice or rethinking things or reframing things. And I think that's actually the true value of having a co-founder, regardless of who ends up being the CEO, who ends up running marketing, product, whatever. The functional piece, sure, it's important, but really it's that the camaraderie, the teamwork, the almost cheerleading each other, and the helping each other get through a super tough time. And that really was, we had that cohesion, and we didn't always agree. Absolutely not. I mean, we did the stand for something value because we didn't agree all the time. But when it really came down to where our back was against the wall and we had some nightmare moments, from, not being able to pay payroll to having an activist investor on our cap table who wanted to kick me and the management team out at one point. I mean, we really had some crazy stories. And even if we had disagreed on strategy or product or market, it didn't matter. When those moments hit, we had each other's back. There was never 1 second where we didn't have each other's back in those moments. We would almost rally back together, be like, all right, hey, I know we had a bad day today. You're an asshole. You're an asshole. Cool. Fuck that. We have something bigger to worry about. Right. And that happened for like 10 plus years. It was pretty cool.
It's funny. I always use this when I think about relationships I've had with leaders at companies. I think that the word friend gets a bad rap. Like friend is almost like a different F word in business. I'm like, no, like I want to be the best friend I can be. And being a best friend is being there for someone. Being the best friend is tough love, right? And saying what needs to be said. You do it with being thoughtful, but you're there for somebody. And yet friend, for some reason in work, gets a bad rap. But when I think about your relationship with your partners, it felt like the friend zone should be a good thing. I'm in the friend zone should be a positive, not a negative. Is that how you see it too?
Yeah, I mean, basically every business that I've started has been with friends and family to some degree. I think, there's a slogan out there is like, never do business with friends. And you see that on social media all the time. And like people just like love to rally around that saying. I don't know about that. I don't buy into that. I think that you need to have a level of maturity if you're going to work with friends and family. You have to be comfortable, even more comfortable with uncomfortable conversations and be able to thread that line. So it's maybe not for everyone. I think you need to be a stronger leader, frankly, to be able to work with friends and family. But the upside is the trust, and that's really difficult to shake. So you're talking about a rock solid foundation versus a weak foundation. And I would take the rock solid foundation any day, even if there's some like weird moments or uncomfortable moments. And look, you just got to frame it in the beginning to everyone. Look, we're friends, but we're friends or even family. We all won't be in our roles forever, including me, the CEO. Everyone is going to hit a ceiling. You're going to maybe break through that ceiling or not, and that's okay. Like we're going to talk about it. And if you can call my bullshit, I'll call your bullshit. Like that's just the attitude you have to have. And just make sure there's no just massive egos that don't allow those types of conversations to happen. And I found that if you're just really early, like upfront and honest early on, then people kind of go in it with eyes wide open and go, you know what? Yeah, I do have to keep earning my stripes. And maybe I don't want to be leading a 20-person, 30-person team as a founder. And they're just, that gives them, instead of feeling trapped in the role, it sort of provides that outlet or that opportunity for them to raise their hand and go, hey, actually, I don't really like this role anymore. I don't want to leave the company, but I don't really like what I'm doing. Can we talk about that? And they don't feel bad about it. It doesn't feel like they're going to like lose their equity or they're going to be pushed down somehow. And that ego and pride really gets in the way a lot of co-founder relationships, and they just don't have those conversations early and often enough. And then down the road, what happens? Like someone feels trapped. They're not really doing a good job. And then all of a sudden there's a co-founder breakup, or whoever was named the CEO has to fire the co-founder, or the board gets involved. And that's all too common. So you really just, if you're going to go in, you got to go in with eyes wide open. But I would say the upside trumps the downside almost always.
What, I think we're aligned on frameworks and systems and like how to operationalize these systems. This feels like another classic case where I used to call them for some clients, create like an this was during the pandemic, create a 15-minute oh shit meeting, like literally put it on the calendar. 15-minute, it's an oh shit stand-up meeting where it's a psychological safe place to say what you need to say and get it on the table. And those are the speed bumps that have to happen monthly or quarterly or whatever it might be. To me, it's not just at the I'm sure I think if you're setting the ground rules at the beginning, it's really speed to truth, not just speed to trust, right? Like keep the truth going on the table. And I feel like I've crashed and burned on this one in past companies where in my heart, I knew I came together with certain business partners and it was like, oh, well, I think this is the right move, but I couldn't even have really brutally honest conversations with them. And you wonder why I'm in this world now where it's like, oh, wait a minute, this is my true belief system. I couldn't truly be myself in the past. When you talk about systems, you talk about creating frameworks and opportunities for people to speak their truth. How does that look like from your lens?
Well, first of all, I would say that everyone has gone through what you just said, right? Like, I don't think I made so many mistakes along this path, this journey, with those, uncomfortable conversations and like you said, speed to truth. Ultimately, I would get there and we never let it break us. But there were a lot of moments where conversations could have been had much, much earlier versus waiting and having things build up and then explode. And I think that's like a people management thing. It's a maturity thing. And you need to take extra care with your co-founders in those situations. So I think for us, it's like we had a culture of, I don't love the word radical transparency, but we had a culture where people could express their opinions. We were highly communicative about where the company was really at with all employees. We would share financials regularly with all employees. We basically treated every employee like an investor, like a board director, more or less. And that created the appropriate sort of level of context for people to understand where other people were coming from. And this was a very underrated, I think, sort of trait of Classy over time was that sort of built-in empathy that came with the business context that everyone had. And that helped make some conversations a little bit easier because if someone was arguing one path or the other, all the information was on the table and they were kind of all on the same page, which was great. But ultimately, sometimes like there really would be a bubbling up of conflict. And I think, like you said, we would literally get two people in a room and be like, don't leave until you figure it out. Like, I mean, you kind of have to do that. Sometimes I would actually, especially if I had two executives on my team that were in this, we're talking about co-founders, but this happens at every level. You definitely do not want a disconnect between your executives. And that actually happens quite a bit, unfortunately. So you really do have to do that. And sometimes I would be the person that would essentially like mediate that. And I'd have to bring them into my office. They'd sit down. They'd have death stares at each other. And then by the end, we were hugging. And that's what you just have to do, even if it takes 3 hours, because that might feel really inconvenient. And it does kind of suck. Like, I want to be working on other stuff. I don't want to be treating my executives like babies. But if you believe that they're really talented and they're doing a good job and they're not purposely trying to be disruptive within the company or they're trying to be some sort of like empire builder, then you have to take the time to unblock that relationship and figure it out, because executives and co-founders have a ripple effect throughout the entire company. And when there's a disagreement or conflict is not resolved for too long, guess what? Everyone feels it. They know it. They know it. And it's just crazy. It's inevitable. And you think, oh yeah, we're good, right? And you're avoiding this conflict or this tough conversation, and it literally cripples the company. So, we're literally talking about courage here. There's probably no better, more courageous thing to do than to tackle a tough conversation early, even if it's not just for business reasons, because literally you're holding the company back by not doing that. And we found that time and time again. I got better at it as I went. And nowadays, if something's like bothering me for more than one day, like it's just sitting with me weird, like a comment someone made, or I hear something from someone, I hear something else from another person, like there's a disconnect, I just call them right away. I have like and sometimes it's still nerve wracking. Like I'm now 40 and I've done several companies, and it's still like, I'm like, okay, what am I going to say? How do I enter this conversation the right way? How do I think about it? How do I look at it from their perspective? How do I let them talk? And then I explain kind of where I'm coming from. But I'll literally just say, hey, this happened and it kind of didn't make me feel so good. Or, I didn't love the way that sounded, or you approached that, or I'm hearing a disconnect and I just wanted to call you and ask your opinion on it. And that's how I start almost all those conversations. It's really 2 sentences where I'm like, this kind of happened. It's not sitting right with me, and I just wanted to call you. And that works so well because you just listen. And oftentimes there's a legitimate story that you didn't understand, or a legitimate angle, and you just need to help connect the dots for that person in some way and unbreak the thing that appears broken. So that's what we do now. And I just, speed to, what did you say? Speed to truth.
Speed of truth.
I think that's great. I think you should try to compress that as much as humanly possible.
Yeah. Well, when I rattled off a bunch of words at the top, right? Drive, I added intentionality in there. And there are days where, if you think about where I started, which was the advertising world, there are days I absolutely despise saying I started in advertising. And there are other days I'm like, thank you, universe, because the 2 big wins coming out of advertising, one, I got really lucky with a mentor who said, you're not in advertising, you're in creative business. Like, that's the world you're in. And to me, when you talk about your degree, that's creative business, right? You're like, there's an operating side to it, there's a system side to it, but there's frameworks and space to be creative. And I've always seen myself down that middle. And then the second is, you can't not body jump. You can't not jump into the shoes of somebody else and try to see what the world is like from their lens. And I think leadership often is slowing down and really seeing what it's like for that person. How did they arrive at that scenario? I'm going back on that part where I said, I'm not going to talk about fear. I think when fear wins, it floods us. And sometimes we are less thoughtful than we should when fear overwhelms us. When you ask a question that's diffusing like that, help me understand this isn't sitting well with me. Walk me through the story. It feels like a really good way to just diffuse fear. Is that how you see it too?
Well, absolutely. And I think people typically sense that something's off. And so they like to explain. You're giving them an opportunity to explain, even if they don't know exactly what's troubling you or whatever else. But I literally 9 times out of 10, maybe 10 times out of 10, there's something positive happens from that conversation. And typically what I find is that they're missing an input of information. Like there's something that they just don't know that they need to know to connect the full picture, or their inputs are different than yours for whatever reason. Those are basically the 2 things that are off. It's usually not that the person's so disagreeable or so trying to fuck you over somehow. It's like, it's
Right.
really an information thing and a context thing. And you just got to search for the inputs. Like, what got them there, and where'd they get that information? And did you miscommunicate as the leader somehow? Or did you withhold information without realizing it? Are they missing an input? Or do they get their inputs from a totally different source that is sort of unvetted by you? And I don't mean in a control way. It's just like, you don't know where that's coming from. And like literally every single situation is similar to that, because if you hired the person in the first place, they're likely very reasonable. They're likely very smart. They're just coming to a conclusion because they have different inputs.
Sounded very engineer of you, very engineering of you, brother. But you're
You
right.
said the
You're
word
right.
system. I leaned into
Yeah,
it.
I I think your comment though of it's all a puzzle, right? And I know you don't you love the concept of radical transparency, just not those words. That's a way to minimize the wrong inputs. Like if you're putting it
Totally.
all on the table, people understand your logic, they understand your rationale. It's amazing to think you've been a CEO and a founder for 20 years now. And I joked at the top of the hour the Haskell Mutual Fund, but it kind of is. Like you've got Highland, which is your CEO coaching program where good founders can butterfly into great CEOs. You've got the health store. I might be calling this wrong, but this is how I say it. Haskell Creek Farms. I think I know where the name came from, which is turning conventional medicine on its head. And I'm really curious to learn more. In your mind, are you just in experimentation mode at that one location and you're just tinkering away, which we'll get into? And then I really do. I mean, we kind of already covered it, but never say die. And if you're not, guys, obviously I'm going to be, I love my weekly dose of courage, but never say die. You can't not learn something new. Not just that it's a Goonies reference, even the aesthetic on how it comes to life. I really appreciate the nuance, thoughtfulness. It's a smart newsletter. It's fun. You don't feel like you're working. And I think that's what it's supposed to do. And it's just in my mind, a newsletter on just great leadership. Uh, I know there's other things on the podium or other things in the mutual fund, but is that what's getting the majority outside of being a dad and a husband? Is that what's getting the majority of your time?
Yeah, for sure. I'll start with the newsletter. I mean, that really, was inspired by, I guess, just transitioning from Classy and wanting to kind of get some of my thoughts on paper. It wasn't really like, oh, I'm going to build this big newsletter necessarily. It was really just about storytelling and recording some of my experiences and thoughts. And I got asked to coach a couple founders one-on-one by some of the Classy investors, like coaching their portfolio companies. And I had never coached before. I mean, you coach as a leader, but it's a little different when it's external. And so, I enjoyed that, and I learned a lot about myself, and I learned, I got confident that I could help founders in kind of that phase of growth. But I knew I didn't want to scale the one-on-one coaching. That's not really what I wanted to fill my calendar with. So I started to think of like other ways that I could, quote unquote, coach. And the newsletter and the newsletter and the blog is one of them for sure. Content on social media is another one. And then this program called Highland, which is more or less like a group coaching program for startup founders that are between 1 and 10 million in revenue. Typically, they're all found product market fit, but they're just in that like initial scale phase where they're like, all right, now I got to work on the company and the organization, not just the product. And that's a totally different mentality from a leadership perspective. You go from basically really like this builder mentality as a founder to trying to become a real CEO. And a lot of founders don't make that transition. I call it build mode to scale mode. And they get stuck typically with one foot in one world, one foot in the other world. They know they need to be in scale mode. They just can't get out of build mode. They stay in the weeds. They obsess over the details. And there's nothing wrong with having a high quality bar, but you've really got to figure out how to create better leverage for yourself as a leader, or you will become the bottleneck and you will become the reason that the company flatlines. And so people join the program when they're entering that phase and they know they're transitioning, they're self-aware enough to know, and they want to learn from each other, but also from me. Or they actually did start to see some slowdown and they're like, what am I doing wrong? And it's really cool. We've got every industry in there, like from SaaS all the way to retail, CPG. I did it that way and not just SaaS because I learned actually the most from other industries, not technology. And I had my biggest breakthroughs when I was learning from completely different industries or reading a book on a totally different subject. And then all of a sudden I was like, aha. And so we sort of have created that environment. And we're doing a physical event here in Montana where that crew, there's about 50-ish people or so in the program now. That crew is coming to Montana. And then we invited the actual Montana entrepreneurial ecosystem to join as well. So we're kind of like commingling the two, which is kind of neat. So that'll be a lot of fun. And I'm decking my barn out as a conference venue, and we've got everyone from the president and COO of GoFundMe now to Drew Bledsoe, the quarterback in the NFL, to who else do we have? a couple VCs from Norwest, from Family Fund, et cetera, et cetera. So we have a bunch of people coming in and like going to speak and help this group of founders get through this phase. So that's what that's all about. And I appreciate the kind words on the newsletter. We try to not take, it's like somewhat boring subjects, right? They're like operational subjects, but we try to not take ourselves too seriously and have some fun with it. And like you said, like read it. It's kind of like reading a story and then you're learning something versus like being overly technical and just dry and, you know, whatever. So it's good that that's appreciated. And the newsletter just crossed 20,000 people actually, which I'm pretty excited about. So
Amazing, dude. Congrats.
yeah.
Also, Highland, what a great way for you to have a front row seat in the companies you do want to invest in, unless there's a principle I don't know about that says you don't do that. But I mean, I'm sure you're meeting some great people there that you're like, oh, they've got that resilience to them that
Right.
you want to go on the journey with them.
Yeah, it wasn't why I did it, but it is a really interesting side benefit. And what I did was I put a line in the sand that I won't invest in anyone in the program for the first year, and that's to just create discipline for myself. And you get excited about something, and you're like, wow. But I am getting a front row seat at how folks operate, so it's only to my benefit from an investment standpoint, just to observe and to watch.
Yeah.
And so I haven't actually made any investments yet. I have been approached about raising a fund around it, which is kind of cool. I don't really want to be a VC though, so we'll see about that. But it's been awesome just to sort of I get on the front line again and just experience what the founders are going through and to see some of these just total badass companies that they're building. It's really cool. And then oh, go ahead.
No, to say, well, again, I want to be respectful of my juggler focus conversation because it does take immense focus. You have to say no to a lot of things when you commit to being an entrepreneur down one lane, one path. And of course, it's more like Plinko, right? You're like, clink, 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 one of my favorite Price is Right games, and you follow the opportunity. And now, you have a nice chip. One, it allows you to play in all these different arenas. And also, to your point, I love what you said about sometimes you learn something about your vertical by looking at something so far away from your vertical. And that it's like this process that has lived for 20 years in another industry that is novel for your industry. And it's like, well, there's the answer. Now that's called innovation. So very cool and good for you to have the discipline also to say, you know what, let's just watch for now and build relationships, see where it takes us.
But it is hard in terms of like if you're just looking at your time and calendar as a pie chart, doing this type of business and also building personal brand, it's a lot of work and it's a lot of time and you're in the center of it. And that's the thing that's different than a software business. I would always try to take myself out of the center of things because you again would become the bottleneck. So in this type of business, it's a little unnatural for me because it's like I'm the one coaching, I'm the one writing the curriculum. Yes, I have some help, of course, and they're amazing, but like I have to be in the center of a lot of it. So we've had a lot of just active discussions of like, where does this go? How do we scale me out of it in a way? What does this look like? Does it become we're definitely going to continue the newsletter and article, but like what becomes of Highland in 5 years? You know what I mean? Like, so I think that's something that I'm wrestling with. I love it right now. But I think a lot of the curriculum could be turned into a book. It could be turned into other things that people have more access to, not just the people in the program. And to me, that's ultimately what I'm trying to do. I think it's helping this group of founders is fantastic, but I also want to help 10,000 founders, not just 50. So how do you take some of the ideas that we're working through, which initially came from my experience, but are stress tested and improved through the group, and then make that accessible to everyone, every entrepreneur, for free or close to free. And that's kind of where I see it going. It's really like it's a really amazing way to validate and to get to product market fit or content market fit, rewriting it and just hoping people enjoy the concepts.
Yeah. I mean, in the spirit of, I have to be really close here that this isn't a 3-hour show. And also, I mean, you know this, but like my role as a podcast host is very different than my role as a keynote speaker. Like I'm actually trying to stay out of the way here. It's about you and your story, but that same story is the story. Like there are times where I think courage isn't about me. It's about like unlocking courage, and other people are giving them the practical tools. And I've always said courage is like skiing. It's like it's relative. Like what's black diamond to you might be triple black diamond for me, or bunny slope for me. It's
Mhm.
all relative to the person. But if you don't want to go skiing, if you don't want to go to the mountain, I'm the wrong. Like I can't help you at all. And when it's not about you, it's about somebody else. It makes it easier to put yourself front and center because you're like, think about all the founders that are benefiting from your experiences and your watch outs and your mistakes or your wins. They want the wins too. They want all of it. So I'll be very intrigued to see where you take the platform.
And one of the coolest things, honestly, is it's less like the, Sequoia back tech founder or something that emails me or comes up to me. Sometimes it's like literally the general contractor or the plumber or some random business that is like, hey, I follow your content and it's like really helped me, improve my business. And this will be like around town or on the street. I'm like, that's the coolest thing ever. Like that's not, they're just general universal operations and leadership principles. I just never thought of it that way when I started. And that's been one of the most rewarding things. If people can just follow on a social media account and actually get value that helps their business, like that's what it's all about. I mean, that's where you're dialed in enough, you understand your target audience enough, but there's this spillover effect where it's helping almost unintended audience members at this point, and that's just I think that's surprisingly become the most rewarding part of this whole thing.
All right, so I made this Haskell mutual fund bit, and you're at Haskell Creek Farms, but maybe is that the right name? I mean, do you have multiple offices on the farm? Is all this happening up there?
Well, Haskell Creek is the name of a creek that runs through the farm that we bought in Whitefish, and that's where the name came from. And so we started off by doing some farming on our property. It was actually hemp that we were farming, and we did that for a few seasons. And my buddy Craig, who I went to high school with, he lives here in Whitefish, and he is a master cannabis grower and hemp grower. And I was just initially going to invest in him to start sort of a cannabis brand. And eventually I got into it and I was going through my own health journey. Like I was alluding to earlier with Classy, I had like a 2 to 3 year, like I had to have a total reset moment. I was having trouble swallowing, migraines every day, like all this stuff, it's trouble sleeping. And I did like a complete reset on diet, everything from diet to everything I was putting in my body, how I was treating myself. Part of that journey was really understanding like the naturopathic path and not the traditional, conventional medicine path. And I certainly didn't want to, be loading myself up with pharmaceuticals. And so I started to learn a lot about that world. And we ended up doing the cannabis brand, which is called Cannabis Counter, but we ended up adding like other health and wellness products to that store. And that eventually became the health and wellness concept. We peeled it out. So we actually created two different companies, but it all started very organically as like a way to make the cannabis concept more interesting, to attract a different demographic than would typically go into a dispensary, which is basically like soccer moms, for lack of a better word. And we slant old and female, which is just totally different than
Yeah.
the average cannabis brand. But probably one of the most surprising and really cool things that birthed out of that whole thing was Haskell Creek. And now it is essentially a holistic version of a Walgreens or a CVS. It's completely separate from the cannabis brand. We launched a 3,000 square foot store in downtown Whitefish on one of the best corners. And it's an experiment. Like it's a brick and mortar experiment. And I never thought that I'd be thinking about scaling brick and mortar, but where we're at in 2024, especially post COVID, is people are wanting to take more control of their health. They're thinking about preventative medicine more than pills. And there's no partner, there's no like retail partner for them to go to. They have to go online, they have to piece things together. They lean on whatever they can find basically on the internet, but there isn't like a holistic version of a CVS or a Walgreens for them to just walk into and get some advice or fulfill a recommendation that their naturopathic doctor gave them, almost like simulating a pharmacy, but for holistic supplements and whatnot. So we've filled that store with everything from like the top grade proteins and supplements all the way to organic skincare. And it was designed with a slant towards females, but honestly, it's like 50-50. It's equal. We're putting a healthy cafe in there in the winter, and we even built space for naturopathic doctors, estheticians, and others to meet their clients right in the store. So it's really like a kind of a cool twist on a retail experience, all under this sort of banner of preventative health, and the avoidance, for as long as you can, away from pills and pharmaceuticals. And I don't know how much you know about the Walgreens stuff, and the opioids and all that, the lawsuits. But I mean, most of the revenue comes from the pharmacy, and a huge portion of the actual pharmacy revenue comes from opioids, things like Oxycontin and fentanyl that you can literally get at Walgreens. And I find it highly ironic that our concept was birthed out of a cannabis company, which everyone gives shit to, yet you can get fentanyl in Walgreens. Like, that's kind of fucked up. So it's just like, and it has been a really interesting journey. Never expected to be doing this, quite frankly, but I truly believe that if it does well here in Whitefish, that it can do well in a lot of places. And it's totally an experiment. If it never leaves the Whitefish community, I'm actually cool with that. Like, it's good. It's just a really good benefit, I think, hopefully, for the community. But if it ends up in 100 cities, 1,000 cities, I could actually see that happening, because there's just really not. It's filling a gap that truly doesn't exist, which is pretty cool. And we're seeing very, very strong product market fit early on. It's like brick and mortar product market fit, but people are repeating, they're coming back, and that's just really cool and rewarding to see. So who knows where it goes, but I'm very bullish on this space in general. If it's not us, if it's not Haskell Creek, someone's going to do this. So,
Right.
and we might as well try.
Awesome, man. It's crazy. First of all, what's old is new, right? Like making experiential retail, right, where everybody else is shying away from retail is very cool. Two, it's clearly personal because of your own journey on health. I think I put this together. Those classy pubs weren't such a great idea after all, right? From a medical standpoint, no. But
Yeah.
but I guess in the spirit of time, how do your kids and your family play in all this? And are we talked a little bit about like that whole work life versus just life's work? How do you like? For me, often there'll be times where I'm never gonna try to convince my kids to look at my shit, but I like that I'm putting down a blueprint if they so choose to opt in. And there's assets that they can read or watch or listen that does bring me joy. Is that playing into your playbook as well, I
Yeah.
guess?
Absolutely. I mean, the content side, the personal brand, if done right, if authentic, and you're not just trying to hack growth, is really like a diary, in a way. It's just public, and it does puts a marker out there for your kids to look at later. Hey, when they're going through college or into their first jobs, obviously, or hopefully I'll be there with them. But some of the stuff that I've gone through, and that can help shape their life. That's a sort of really, really cool side effect. I think it's not the primary reason I'm doing the content, but it's kind of a really cool side effect of it. But you asked how the family is integrated into all this. Well, my wife is a business partner with Haskell. She's a professional designer. She designed the experience. So we're actually working as an entrepreneurial team with my other friend Craig, who I mentioned, who is a high school buddy. So it's actually like really neat. It's not any of the classy founders, but it's another like family and friend startup, which is just, I guess that's my thing. I don't know, but it's gone awesome. Like, honestly, I think we have great boundaries around it. There's been, is there stressful moments? Yeah, of course. I mean, just building out brick and mortar is just a huge pain in the ass, but so rewarding once it's done, like to actually see real people in a real space experiencing something. I don't know if I really like it a lot, which is now with the tech background, I'm kind of thinking like, how do I make this tech enabled in different ways? And maybe that's
Yeah.
how I connect the two. But yeah, no, my wife is part of it. And the first store we did outside of the one downtown, we set up as an event venue too. So we have bands and food trucks, and the whole community comes out, and our kids participate in that. So the kids are very integrated into the community and sort of get to experience the Haskell Creek journey since day one. So they're very much part of the team. You didn't mention Save Farmland. That's the nonprofit that I started, which is connected to this too, which is all about farmland and ranchland conservation. And just recently, my younger son, Graham, he wanted to go to Haskell Creek. He got all this old stuff from the house to sell. He wanted to set up a shop. And then he pitched me on, he really wanted to sell my old skateboard that I wasn't using. So his pitch was, well, I'll donate 10% to Save Farmland. And so I said, I had to say yes, because I was like, that's kind of cool. So he's, a little entrepreneur, and he's.
So how much did you buy it for?
No, he had to go sell it. Sell it.
You didn't buy it from him?
No, he has to go sell it to a stranger. That was the whole idea. So I bought that board. It was like a surf skateboard in San Diego, a couple $100, something like that. And he was going to try to sell it for $100. So he hasn't yet attempted to sell that one. So we will see if it works. But it was pretty cool that he thought to include the Safe Farmland stuff in that. And I think that just speaks to like their proximity to all of this and exposing them in various ways without like, I'm not like, hey, Rowan, that's my older son, get behind the counter and start working at age 11. I mean, that's not really what it's all about, but will that opportunity be there down the road? Absolutely. But they're at least exposed to it. They're seeing starting something from scratch, which is so cool, building something. And hopefully it inspires them to do that later in life.
I promise you, we talked a lot about keeping it real, even though we didn't talk about keeping it real, that I did not mean to end like this, but like in the spirit of stay classy, San Diego, stay curious, stay courageous. I don't think I have to tell you to stay resilient. Just because you live in Montana now doesn't mean you don't have allies down here in San Diego that are rooting for what you're doing. And so it's just awesome to see you just take the axe to work, keep chopping wood, and keep doing what you're doing. I'd love to turn it over to you though, to kind of wrap us. Like, how would you like to sort of end our talk? Yeah, it's the Courageous Podcast. So what do you want the listener? And again, let's be realistic. If someone has been here for 55 minutes, they're into the topic. So take it away.
Yeah. Well, I think when I think of courage, I don't think about like, jumping off a cliff in one of those like, squirrel suit things. I think of like not giving up in those small steps. And we started with the classy stories. Might as well end with that. I mean, we were not exceptional students. We did not have advanced degrees. We didn't really have a lot going for us outside of literally not giving up and seeing step by step the opportunity and learning from that, and just growing our resilience and our thick skin. I think that's a metaphor for life. It isn't just business as well. So just always looking for the learning moment. And to me, that's courageous. So, and I do think there is absolutely no shame in signing off with "You stay classy, San Diego."
Well, there you have it. Stay classy, San Diego.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Courageous Podcast. If you enjoy the show, don't forget to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts so more people can find us. See you again next week.